Well, time for some more enlightenment. Actually, I want to give a little more information about some things I put out before, but some of it may be a rehash, but then again, not all of it a rehash because I want to talk even more about vitamin C because it's so efficient for the amount of money it costs. It probably is the panacea of the world. Maybe it can even improve your energy levels for all I know. But I actually want to point out there's only two things I've noticed that increase your energy levels without getting into anything that is too far out there. One was drinking ozonated water, and another was standing in front of that Lukowski multi-wave oscillator. I noticed that must put out a hell of a lot of negative ions, but that's a side note from what I'm about to talk about. Vitamin C, I think, can be, I don't know if you want to call it a drug, but you know what? If it's a drug, let me say it's the good drug that everybody should be taking. I know a lot of things back in the 60s, they were always talking about cannabis, and actually I think cannabis does have a lot of uses. Actually, when they outlawed hemp, it was the AMA back at that time, when they outlawed hemp with the Cannabis Act. It was the AMA, the American Medical Association, that protested the loudest because they had it in all their remedies and prescriptions. Cannabis, believe it or not. And things now go full circle where they're almost resisting it again because, it's not a money maker. Now, the one thing with vitamin C, though, it's not a money maker. But there's so many different ways this thing can actually work. Now, actually, I want to point out to something. I did a video a while back. Is simple vitamin C a powerful anti-aging hormone? And it was published basically almost a year ago. But sometimes I write a little bit more in the information box than actually is what I say, or sometimes maybe it's a little more clear the way I write than what I talk, because I talk very plain. But I just want to say what I said in that information box, that it's been alleged, perhaps even proven, that the vitamin C supplementation beyond a normal recommended daily allowance, which is 60 milligrams, which they're thinking about doubling to 120, can vastly be supportive of overall good health and longevity. Most species in the animal world kingdom produce their own vitamin C, which is actually well over 99% of the animal world produce their own vitamin C. That's why they don't get sick out there in the harsh climates and under adverse conditions and things. It's true that cats, dogs, mice, and even most species without the internal production of vitamin C, all these species of animals would have greatly shortened lifespans. Now, actually, when I do videos, I tell you, I never go off a script. Never. This is one time I'm making an exception because this is something I actually wrote in another video, and I think it's very important to actually state what I wrote. It says humans have 3 of the 4 essential enzymes to produce vitamin C in the body internally. Sometime in the past, actually we have all 4, but sometime in the past, humans have switched off the gene for gulonolactone oxidase, GLO enzyme, and thus has greatly shortened the lifespan of humans. It may be that the Bible, and some say, it's embellished a little bit, but, maybe it is exactly accurate. I don't know. But it shows you that in the Bible, Noah had a lifespan of 950 years. After the flood, the descendants of Noah had greatly decreased lifespans with succeeding generations. Shem lived to be 600 years old. I don't know, was it Arphaxad lived to be 438 years old, and Abraham lived to be 175, and Moses lived to be 120. So that would correlate with the slow mutation is switching off of the GLO gene, which we have switched off. Actually, there's a very few people that have a small amount of vitamin C capability in producing in their body. They don't get scurvy, but it's nothing like what it used to be. So this also further indicates that there may have been a normal human capability many centuries ago, as it exists presently in the animal kingdom, which is about 99% of the animal kingdom, that, and actually scientists would say that we can live several times our lifespan if this capability was back in there. Another benefit of vitamin C is collagen production. Not only is collagen a major component of the skin, but it's present throughout the body in the tendons, ligaments, and all connective tissue. So in other words, that's sometimes people get these joint aches and pains. They got problems where it seems almost like they have fibromyalgia or some kind of overall pain. Maybe the vitamin C can help because it's also an anti-inflammatory. It's also, cigarette smokers will deplete 25 milligrams, up to 25 milligrams of vitamin C per cigarette. So 3 cigarettes can take out over the recommended daily requirement of vitamin C out of the body through toxins. So maybe it's a good idea that smokers take a lot of extra vitamin C. Now, I put this out before, just want to do a real rehash on it. But the thing is, I'm actually going to get into some other things. And I actually had, I was talking about Ebola and what would you do for first aid. Actually, there's a medical doctor in New York that talks about using intravenous ozone and also supplementation of vitamin C and glutathione and melatonin to combat Ebola. I've not seen, I know maybe there's claims out there about colloidal silver, but I don't think it really has very good, I'm not going to say I know it doesn't have very good antiviral properties when a virus is already established in a body. It doesn't really work that way unless you're talking in outside the body. But the thing is, you got problems when you have problems with viral conditions or anything like that, Ebola, HIV, H1N1, bird flu, and all that type of stuff. Actually, you saw a video. There's a video actually floating around on YouTube of a person that was going to be taken off life support for, I think it was H1N1, and he was in New Zealand, and he actually had they could actually do vitamin C therapy there. He was given massive doses of intravenous vitamin C. Not only did he get off life support, but he had a full recovery. This guy was in a coma. So, actually, vitamin C's had so much capabilities, but it's got capabilities beyond just being used for sick people. It's actually a good thing to do for good health, in my opinion. I mean, everything I researched on this tells me it's a freaking the panacea of the world, for crying out loud. But the thing is, it's dirt cheap. A lot of other things are antioxidants. Maybe they're more stronger antioxidants, like alpha lipoic acid is a very strong antioxidant, but it's a lot of money. Actually, a little bit of alpha lipoic acid, or even selenium, mixed when you take vitamin C will actually keep the vitamin C in the body a little longer in the bloodstream. That's a good thing to take in combination. But you don't have to go too far with this stuff. I'm just putting this out here as general information, because the more I dig into this, I'm like, wow. There's been people, actually the father of this is not actually Dr. Linus Pauling, it was Dr. Kleiner from the 40s. He's the one that really found out about the properties of vitamin C. But actually, I'm showing you here extracellular fluid, the cell membrane, and intracellular fluid. Actually, vitamin C has the capability of getting inside the cells. So when you have viral conditions or anything like that, Ebola, HIV, H1N1, and actually there's been people out there that are very, very accredited, very, very smart, that have claimed that those major diseases have been created by elements within the U.S. working on their own as some kind of evil plot to maybe depopulate the world. Now, maybe that's not true, but maybe that's just conspiracy theory. But I'm saying that claim has been uttered not just by, somebody like is talking on YouTube like me, but I've seen several claims where very, very high-end people have stated this. And, you can look for it yourself, because, I didn't really bother to reference the exact places, but I saw they looked like good references. But then you can always knock down and say the source was no good. You can always say something that if you don't want to believe it, don't believe it. But I'm looking at what vitamin C can do, though, not only for longevity, good health, maybe preventing disease. I think it does prevent disease if it's taking enough of it. Where actually they knocked out a lot of these, refuted a lot of these studies, is if you don't take enough of it, it doesn't work. And I know oral vitamin C, you really can't take anywhere the same amount as intravenous vitamin C, but oral vitamin C is still good. You can most people can take 10,000 milligrams of it a day without having a problem with bowel intolerance. But the big thing about vitamin C, unlike a lot of medicines, or unlike, say, even colloidal silver, it gets inside the cells and it actually repairs damages. See, something like colloidal silver could be work against anything that's a microbe, but then again, it's not a healer. It's not an antioxidant. It's not something that can help the body regenerate and repair, whereas vitamin C can. But vitamin C is a much more powerful antiviral than colloidal silver. Not to knock colloidal silver, but every time I put this out, people don't want to hear it. They go thumbs down, and I'm like, I'm telling you the truth. Don't freaking. And the other thing is, the colloidal silvers that work really good, they're very, very expensive. Not all of it's the same, but even some of the expensive stuff is not that great. The thing is, when you can make it for just about nothing, but the thing is, it's the stuff you make for just about nothing. Even though people, there's so much controversy of how to make it. Is it good? Is it bad? This way, somebody will tell you this type is good. Somebody will tell you that type is good. There are some medical doctors that say there's certain types that are very good, but they're very expensive. But vitamin C is dirt cheap, and it doesn't have to be anything special. It's just plain old exorbic acid. Now, actually, I'm showing here extracellular space and intracellular space again, and I want to state that the one thing that's unique about vitamin C is that it can get inside the cells, repair damage, and also work against microbes that are growing inside or trying to replicate inside cells, whereas other things can't. Actually, this is to give you a good example. This was I'm not going to point where I got this information from, because it's almost like, take it for what it's worth. I know people will ask me for links and this and that, and I'm like, I don't like giving it out too much, but I dig out a lot of this stuff. Actually, I'll tell you some of the studies, and if you try to find them, maybe Google them or whatever. Controversial. In other words, back in the time of the 90s when they had AZT for being prescribed against HIV, which was found out to be a pretty damn toxic drug against HIV. They said that the vitamin C, there were studies that vitamin C was actually more effective in treating the disease than AZT. Except one was costing a hell of a lot of money, the other one doesn't cost hardly anything. And actually, some of this information came from the New Optimal Nutrition Bible 1. Now, you could say, what good is that? Because it's a nutrition Bible, it's not endorsed by the AMA. Well, I'm sorry, that's one source of it. But they don't just necessarily just make something up. They actually show studies where they actually prove this. The other thing was the AZT did not work inside the cells, whereas the vitamin C did. The vitamin C actually did to actually thwart the replication of the virus. This is a very important thing because I think what is it, in HIV they can have viral loads of like hundreds of thousands or maybe millions or something, but in the Ebola virus it's billions. It goes to billions. It replicates so damn fast that you really want to get inside the cell and stop it immediately. Now, I don't know too much about how the vitamin C really works. I know it works as an absolute viricide in and outside the cells. I know it also works against toxins. It's an extremely strong free radical scavenger. Yeah, I know there's other things out there like alpha lipoic acid sometimes is billed as the most powerful antioxidant in the world. And so you also want to take that with other things like CoQ10 and I forgot carnitine, L-carnitine, so they work together. But in the case of vitamin C, it's so damn cheap that maybe it's not as strong per milligram an antioxidant, but cost-wise, it beats everything hands down. Period. Because you could, and the other thing is you could take. There's been no upper limit where they found it to be toxic. Like if doctors were administering up to 500,000 milligrams of vitamin C intravenously, which is like I think that's well over 8,000 times the recommended daily allowance with no toxic effects. They were doing that much intravenously. This is the actual chemical structure of vitamin C, but it makes you look at it, you see it has a lot of HO you know, it's almost reminds you of, you know, hydrogen peroxide and oxygen or something like that. It actually is a free electron donor, though. That's the thing. When something is deprived of electrons, this is a free electron donor. And that is basically how it works to detoxify the body. But it helps the body to actually regenerate cells. And, you know, this actually should be the drug that's of the future. I don't know why. You know, it's like if you look on Wikipedia, I mean, you don't even really see nothing on vitamin C. I mean, it's like it's buried. The information is buried. There's a few medical doctors that advocated greatly, but they were in a minority. But you know what's interesting though is that the few medical doctors that have advocated it, and this all goes all the way back to Dr. Kleiner in the 40s, who basically, I know the story goes that he cured 60 out of 60 polio patients with vast quantities of IV vitamin C. You know, I can't really like prove this stuff in one way or another, but it's like, I know I'm preaching to certain crowds when I say, yeah, the medical system is all about money, but you know, you got to watch, because a lot of people pitch that deal, and then they try to sell you something expensive. First off, I'm not selling nothing. Number two is I'm not even trying to recommend anything that is expensive, period. You know, this is something I personally do. That's why, you know, if I believe in it, and I studied a lot, I think it's 100% legit. I think it's smart as all hell to do. But a lot of people still aren't doing it. You know, the other thing is, the less you are sick, the less you feel bad, the less you're fighting a cold or anything like that, the higher your productivity is. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, I don't really look at it from the standpoint of being productive for somebody else, but being, you know, getting more done for myself or what I need to do is very important. But it's amazing how people have not taken this seriously. Actually, one of the biggest things with vitamin C, it could probably, I think it's a very, very strong, well, there's a lot of evidence to show that. First off, it does support collagen and skin health and longevity. But it's like you just can't take a little bit. I mean, some people say, you know, 1,000 milligrams is a lot. And I used to think that was a lot, because 1,000 milligrams, you know, 60 milligrams was the recommended daily requirement. So, you know, 10 times was 600 milligrams. And here I was taking, I don't know, that's 16 and 2/3 times plus whatever I had in food. And I'm thinking, wow, I got mega vitamin C there. No. It's really got to be way the hell over that. Actually, now I'm taking about 20,000 milligrams. And I don't, you know, you really can't evaluate this, because it's such a slow process that it's almost like you really can't take, you know, they evaluated this with mice, for instance, and they took the their own vitamin C capability out of mice, out of their bodies. And see, mice they can produce their own vitamin C. What happened was, the mice that had that capability taken outside of their bodies lived a lot less. They lived like less than half the age, and they also developed cancer. And the mice that had the capability inside of them, they lived a normal lives. Now, it's also interesting that a goat, a 160-pound goat will produce, on average in a day, 14,000 milligrams of vitamin C. So you think, well, maybe that's about average for a human. But if a goat gets sick, their vitamin C producing capability really kicks in, and they produce hundreds and hundreds of thousands of times for the vitamin C that's needed. I mean, they'll produce, hundreds of thousands of milligrams of vitamin C, excuse me, not of the amount that's needed, but hundreds of thousands of milligrams of vitamin C. So, you know, it's a matter of if I would not know this for a fact, but, you know, I know some people that are very much interested in, you know, staying young forever. You know, Joan Rivers, Gloria Vanderbilt, whatever. It's a matter of, you know, I don't know why they wouldn't get into this, but maybe the people that are around them, you know, have advised them that it's not really necessary. But then I suspect You really wouldn't know because you'd have to. I mean, it would take decades to really know. It would take decades to really know. Who the hell really knows until you prove it to the world? And then it's a matter of, some of the things that have been proven to the world with vitamin C. Most people don't listen. So, my attitude is, you can't change the world. Period. You're not going to be able to change the world. You throw the information out there, the seeds of whatever knowledge it is. I think I'm accurate on this, dead on. But it's like people, if they don't listen, they don't listen. Some people have a death wish, and that's exactly what it goes on. One of the biggest killers back in the 90s, which they thought was going to exterminate the human race practically, was the HIV, right? Then they got ways to suppress it. And, but back in the 90s, they were finding out that vitamin C was working better than AZT. And I says, I don't know how true that is. That's a thing. I don't know if you can rely on that information, but there have been studies. I know some of it came from the new Optimal Nutrition Bible 1. But, they show that it actually works inside the cells where it replicates and it destroys the HIV right inside the cells and repairs the cells that have been damaged. So, whereas the AZT wasn't. And that's why I suspect it would work on any new concoction of diseases that get devised that are spread throughout the population again, that vitamin C would work against it. Only if large quantities of it were taken, because one of the biggest controversies happened back some years ago when the Linus Pauling Institute, Dr. Linus Pauling, a two-time Nobel Peace Prize winner, he demonstrated, he made claims that large quantities of intravenous vitamin C will actually eliminate advanced cancer in the body. And then the Mayo Clinic went and tried to repeat the studies. But the thing is, they did not use intravenous vitamin C. They used oral vitamin C. They used a lesser quantity. And they did not conduct the trial that long. I could refute any medicine out there if you say, let's take a smaller doses of it and let's not do what it as, let's not use it as it should be used. And you can say it doesn't work, right? So vitamin C has so many different things. It could be longevity. It could be anti-cancer. It could be antiviral. I mean, I don't want to make these claims too much because, somebody's going to come out and say, oh, you can't say that maybe. I don't know. But it's like there's been a lot of studies and strong indications that vitamin C even worked against the AIDS virus. And, there was even studies conducted by the Linus Pauling Institute comparing vitamin C with AZT in laboratory cultures of HIV-infected cells. And they found that the vitamin C was far more effective than the AZT. But what would happen there? They'd lose a lot of money. I don't know I don't know what the dosage would be, because none of these studies tell me what the dosages are. And I think that's the whole damn thing. I've read in stories in Dr. Cathcart's book about him administering, attempting to clear up completely HIV/AIDS in a person with 180,000 milligrams of vitamin C intravenously for 2 weeks, followed up by strong oral doses. It worked greatly to suppress the virus, but it did not clear it. But then again, I don't know, maybe you didn't do enough, or maybe long enough. Maybe if they did that for a month, or he did 300,000 for a month, I would be gone. I don't know. But the thing is, the cost is like dirt cheap. And basically, though, it's like, it probably, it probably would be. Actually, I'm going to tell you this right now. There was a major war back then in the 90s. This is like forgotten information. It seems to be almost like purged from the net. And it's like basically it was Patrick Holford's statement that AZT was proving to be far less effective than vitamin C working against AIDS and HIV-infected cells. I don't know who this Patrick Holford is, but that was one of the ones, and they were used a lot of different lab experiments to see how it worked both externally to the cell and also internally. A lot of times the medicines do not actually get inside the cell and do good where something is replicating or something is doing damage. The other thing also, like I said, with vitamin C, any of the toxins, like in other words, if you say you had cancer and say let's assume vitamin C helps to destroy cancer or stop the cancer virus, because cancer is a virus. It's a pathogen. It's actually caused by a virus. At least that's what some people say. And considering that vitamin C is an absolute antiviral, well, let's say it does destroy the virus, right? Let's say it does. But the thing is, every time a virus is destroyed or a cancer cell is destroyed, it releases toxins. But what happens with vitamin C versus toxins? It actually renders them inert by working as an electron donor. And then what happens with damaged cells that have caused, from cancers? The vitamin C actually helps in repair and regenerate. See, a lot of medicines might work against a disease, but nothing actually does all three things where it works against the disease, detoxifies, and also helps to regenerate and heal. The thing is, it's dirt cheap. It's dirt cheap. So, I want to put this out as an adjunct to some of the other things I did before, because the more I'm looking at this, actually I didn't know all this. I knew some of it, and I was kind of sidetracked into so many different things about, what's good and what's bad. And a lot of things I did put out are good, but as far as cost effectiveness and what it can do across the board, it looks like vitamin C's got one of the strongest potentials out there. Actually, if you take vitamin C with selenium, a little bit of selenium, I know that gets controversial because the government says, I know too much selenium will get toxic, but it depends on who you talk to or get the information from what's toxic. But let's say a little bit of selenium, because it is necessary, it is a vital trace element. Vitamin C with a little of selenium, with a little bit of alpha lipoic acid, and also N-acetylcysteine, NAC, which is something that's extremely strong. It could do a lot to probably, I'm going to say it could really help prevent disease, but it's a matter of how much of it you actually take. It's highly interesting, though, that I don't think anybody has really pursued this. It's like they try something. I don't know how many people really pursued this, because what I really try to look for is what the doctors say. And then there was this big controversy where some doctors saying no, and some are saying yeah, it works. I don't necessarily look at what the alternative people say, because I found a lot of these alternative people are just either they're repeating something from a liar, or they're just believers in something, and it's almost like a religious cult. There's limits to what a lot of things can do. I mean, I think vitamin C does have its limits, but it's very, very powerful, even from the standpoint, I think, of longevity. And that was a scientific study basically that was conducted. It wasn't really a medical study, and you really can't do a medical study from the time of Noah and the time of Moses and Abraham, and take blood samples and see what the hell they got in their blood and what kind of genes they have and whatever the hell it is going on. You can't do it. It's all a theory. But the only fact we know is that we do have all four genes to produce our own vitamin C in our body, and if that fourth gene was not dormant, a lot of scientists say that our lifespan would be, several times what it is today. So I'm thinking, could you do that with just taking vitamin C on your own? Maybe. To me, I don't see how it can possibly hurt. You know why I say that is because it's non-toxic in any amount they've ever found. I mean, the worst you could do with taking a lot of oral vitamin C is you can't digest the ascorbic acid. And, you know, if you divide up the doses, you could take a lot more, but you can't digest up to a certain point, and then, you know, it gets excreted much faster, and you have bowel intolerance. But you know, probably would be a good idea to take vitamin C. At least that's what I'm doing. I'm taking it right up to the limit where you get the bowel intolerance and just back off a little bit. So I'm taking mega doses of it. I really just kind of discovered this where I knew how good it was, but I didn't know exactly how good it was, especially in the mega doses. And I wish I started on this earlier because to me, this is one of the smartest things to do, especially for the money. So is vitamin C a powerful anti-aging hormone? Probably. Is vitamin C an absolute anti-viricide? Absolutely. Could vitamin C possibly help you with preventing disease? I think so. That's why I'm taking it, you know. And is because vitamin C also going to maybe help you with your overall productivity and mental alertness because you feel good and you're not sick? I think so too. So it's very important. So let me just put this as a little bit more of an age of enlightenment because they've known about this since the 40s. And in the 90s, when HIV looked like it was going to kill like about 50% of the population on this earth, they knew about it back then, that it was working. There was doctors that were saying it worked better than the existing drugs out there. Plus it worked inside the cells where the drugs weren't working inside the cells. And it was also repairing the body. They still were suppressing the information, even though thousands and thousands were dying. I don't know, man. So, take it for what it's worth, but, I put the gem of information out there, and, just follow up on your own research and see, what you find out yourself. Because I can't tell you flat out, because I don't run no multi-million-dollar lab to conduct experiments. But I know what I'm doing personally. I take a lot of vitamin C. Now,